welcome back to another episode of the Inkwell podcast. I have two great guests on here that do a lot in the indie comic sphere, and let's just get into introducing both of them. We have Kat and Phil from Lifeline Comics.
Hello.
Hey guys.
What I like to do is just get the folks out there that haven't heard of you or know of you and really what you do or Lifeline Comics to give them a chance to get to know you a little bit and talk about how you got into comics or just how you got into what you're doing on Kickstarter in general. So there's just a handful of questions, just kind of like let us know some things about you, and we'll just dive right in here. So, really, for either one of you, you can take turns however you want to do it. What really inspired you to create your own indie comic? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I'll start because it's kind of connected our journey. So
Hmm.
for me, I've been a comic book critic for decades. So I started in high school, and I did a YouTube channel because I was a Wednesday warrior. I loved comics. My dad got me into comics, and then in college, I wrote a screenplay. It was a superhero screenplay. I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to make a comic book? And I was working with a publisher at the time, and then I was like, you know what? I really kind of want to do my own thing, and I was mostly just focusing on the superhero book. And then Phil, if you want to, I'll pass the baton of like how you started, and that kind of connected us to make this company.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to see parallel tracks and then they come together.
Yeah.
I was a lifelong comic book fan as well. I grew up reading and really enjoying comics. I became a Wednesday warrior when I was in high school and started like really regularly reading around like high school, college age. And then I actually was familiar with Kat from her YouTube channel, from her comic reviews, because there's not a million people on the internet talking about comics. So uh, I met her coincidentally through a friend of a friend, someone I went to middle school with, who Kat went to college with. We all met up, and I was like, "Oh, I've seen your reviews," and we kind of just became friends that way. We would go see movies. I knew Kat had been published in comics at the time. She was working with a small publisher, and it was something I was always very into. And I'd studied writing in school as well, and I was like, "Oh, Kat, you want to like." Let me know, like, how'd you break into this space? Like, what are the ins and outs? And she, talked about what she did. And I put my first comic out in 2020, right when the pandemic started in March.
Hmm.
And then, we were making comics and cheering each other on for about a year. And then at a certain point, we were like, oh, like, let's table together at conventions. You could split the
Yeah.
cost. And then we were like, it'd be really cool if we wrote something together that way. Like in the middle of the table, you have one thing that's like both of ours. And we
Hmm.
did a crossover between our two series at the time, Haunting and like Fall Like Daughter. And we had such a fun time writing that one shot. It's still to this day one of our favorite things that we've written, that we were like, oh, we should work together more often. And then we kind of just snowballed into where we're at today, where we
Hmm.
run Lifeline Comics and have dozens of have more projects together than we do apart.
Yeah. No, you have quite a few projects, and we'll get into those because there's some really good stuff out there, and I think you're able to tell stories that are interesting and stories that people want to read. It's just one of those things, like it's finding your niche, finding the people out there that want to read the stories. But you do some really really cool stories. And I mentioned like kind of going through the Kickstarters and doing a little bit of research for this podcast. Kat, you've had some formal training. Can you, or Phil, you mentioned like studying some writing a little bit. And screenplays are considerably different than writing comics. So it's one of those things that how does that translate? Even writing a novel is considerably different. So can you kind of touch on some of the formal education, maybe how that's helped?
Yeah, for me, I did for school, did communications and journalism. So I actually was a journalist for a very long time, a comic book
Mhm.
journalist. So
Nice.
I worked for IGN, I worked for TV Guide, I worked for Newsarama, any DC Comics. I worked for
Mhm.
a lot of people, and then one day I decided I wanted to fully dedicate myself to comic book creating. I'll say it was after success. It's not just like, oh, let's try this thing, but after we're like, oh, I can actually quit the day job and do this
Mhm.
full time. It was a cool opportunity. But yeah, so for the schooling, I want to be a journalist. That's kind of the route I was taking, or writing for television. So that led me to a master's program where I did a TV writing degree, and that helped me learn how to produce as well. So I think all that was helpful in a way, to because comics, They do integrate into entertainment a lot, like, a
Mhm,
lot of
mhm,
times, and honestly, the reason I fully went into comics was because every TV writer I talked to is like, "Wait, you write comics? That's kinda how you get your foot in the door for television or movies, because if you own an IP, that's so much easier than trying to pitch your stuff around." Like, "Oh, that
mhm,
totally makes sense." You kinda could get both dreams happening, and then along the way, I was just like, even if this is, I just do comics, I feel very satisfied being able to make a career out of it. Obviously, like, one day, wouldn't it be cool to do more entertainment stuff? Sure. But it's so funny to see the pathways diverge, like be
mhm.
like, wait, I could just do this comic thing fully. But yeah, the schooling, it helped to find a direction, I would say. And I,
Mhm.
I think, having it in my back pocket that I know how to write screenplays and know a little bit about the ins and outs of TV production, sure it helps because it's something you
Yeah,
could give if you're in a meeting at some point. But for the most part, you don't need schooling
yeah.
to write. I think it's very much learning on the job,
Mhm.
and that's what I learned about Kickstarter. I didn't go to business school, right? But we both
Okay.
run a business, and I learned more on the job than I could have in a business school
Yeah,
place. But that doesn't mean I regret the schooling I did. I'm
yeah,
happy I have that experience because I think it led me here.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. My background, I actually studied accounting and business in school, and then I
Oh, okay.
also did study writing. I have a minor in creative writing, I'll say, because I
Okay.
qualified for it. I took all the classes. I just didn't officially get it. But
Yeah.
I have the background in both like the business area and the writing area. And I agree with Kat's sentiment. I think a lot of running a business, and like b being a writer, and especially a comic writer, is just learning on the job, is
Mhm.
learning by doing and putting yourself out there. It helped having that basis because Kat and I both had at least a little bit of a background when it
Mhm.
comes to like knowing how to build a budget, and knowing how to market yourself. Like we had some schooling on that, but a lot of it's trial and error. A lot of it's just continuously producing and learning what works and what doesn't work. And it's the same with writing. It's like the reason a writing class is often valuable is because you are in a forum where you can talk to other writers and
Yeah.
expand your own creative horizons by writing with other people. So it's been very valuable for Kat and myself to write as a duo because we have very similar styles, but we also have very different styles, and we cover each other's bases very well. Kat often asks the questions I don't, and I'll ask Kat the
Yeah.
questions that she doesn't think of. So it's helpful whether you write as a duo or write individually, just to work with other people, especially people who are writers and interact with other creators. It's the best way to learn is just by doing and interacting with your peers.
And when
Yeah.
we started in particular, we like talked to some like people we went to school with. Like
Yeah.
you talked to somebody that was in your writing class. Well, I've
Mhm.
talked to a few people that was in my writing classes. So like, especially starting, it's really great to get other people's opinions. After a while, we do so much you can't ask so much for free work for people
Yeah.
to read your stuff all day.
But
But
we do still pull in our writing peers when we get stuck, which does happen every once in a while. Even writing as much as we do, every once in a while we get so in our own heads that we can't figure something out, and then we like pull together a council of people and get on a call and just like take us back to the drawing board and help us. And we did that as
benefits
recently as like a
tremendously.
month and a half ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we usually give their names in the comics, but to my co-hosts for that, I do like I used to do a podcast for the Legends of Tomorrow, but now we just do a podcast about whatever media we want to because Legends of Tomorrow ended. But we had like this cool group of fans that still listen, so we're like, why don't we do this? And they're really good at storytelling because they
Mhm.
talked about storytelling for so long and they had some journalism background, so it was cool to kind of get their thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I would agree. I have a degree in small business and design, and I can say absolutely it's not needed, but there's a foundation there to understanding some of the basics, and then you build off of that with your peers, with your cohorts, and all the people that even you go to shows with. It's always important, good or bad criticism. You know what I mean? You want to try to like have people read it and take that to heart, and it just builds better products, right? It just builds those better things. You did mention kind of like film influence and TV shows a little bit. What are some of your influences and how do those translate, whether it be, because for me, like film is a huge influence on how I kind of draw my panels and lay pages out because I know what works for film and that translates pretty easily in comics and comic panels. What are some of your influences, whether it be film or music or writers or anything?
I think each other honestly are definitely influenced, just like things that we like. One day I'll like go to sleep and like, oh, that's a really cool idea. I want to tell Phil about that. So I think at this point, it's what we bounce off each other because
Mhm.
we also produce a lot. So it's
Yeah.
that's a little harder. But when we're trying to come up with a new idea, I think we just always go to the drawing board. Like, what type of stories do we like, and what characters do we like? So I think that
Mhm.
was always the start in any new project. Um, we have a project coming up that we're kind of pitching around that kind of started that way. Trying to think of things that we recently did that's like based on. So obviously, we our Ever Afterverse is based on all public domains. So like we had to go
Mhm.
from something for that.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of things that aren't that.
I think
Like,
some one thing that
go.
Kat and I both had like a very like one of the things we talked about first when we first met is we both really love Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. You know, we
Mm. Who
I think that's a
doesn't?
big influence for both of us, and it was it's funny because we bonded over how much we love Cordelia Chase. Like that was one of the
Mhm.
first things we like really like talked about. And we were just like, oh, nobody appreciates her enough, and that's something Kat and I tend to love a lot in comics. Is just a supporting cast, a really strong supporting cast,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's a big cornerstone for a lot of the comics that we write, especially like our passion projects, is just being able to kind of build out a world and build out these like ancillary characters who like aren't like maybe your chosen one or whatever, but
Yeah.
who are able to go through journeys that they otherwise would not be able to go through if they weren't in close proximity to the central character. So I think that's a big influence for both of us.
Yeah, and we love interpersonal relationships. I think that's why, like, living life, right? Living life helps you
Mhm.
write,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
a lot of the conversations we'll have in these comics probably came from conversations that we've had with each other. We just saw like, while we're people watching or whatever. So, like, I
Yeah.
think life also influences your writing.
Yeah, I mean, you could write forever watching people, just the stories you could tell. So yeah, that's interesting. How it's more like collaborative between the two of you, and you kind of influence each other to continue to tell the stories. But what would you kind of feel some of the biggest challenges are? And you do a lot. You do a lot of different characters and IPs and things like that. And it's like it seems like every month you're having a new Kickstarter or multiple Kickstarters launching. So I mean, that alone, for a lot of creators, we kind of launch one Kickstarter every 3 or 4 months if we're lucky. What are some of the challenges and how does that look?
I'll
I
pass
think
the baton to Phil first. Yeah.
Yeah, I think where we're at now, I think balancing is definitely a
Okay.
big it's a big part of our day to day. We have to be very organized to make sure that we're thinking about what's live right now. Are we fully maximizing it to its full potential? Are we promoting everything that
Hmm.
we should be promoting? And then also simultaneously being like, let's work on what's launching next month, and
Hmm.
let's make sure that we're in pre-production for what's launching in 6 months, and let's make sure that we're writing what's launching in 8 months. So we have a lot of cool sheets that we're dancing between to kind of keep ourselves in order. But I think one thing I'll emphasize is that we had to get to this point. We weren't launching
Hmm.
a campaign a month or two campaigns a month until we had already been creating comics for years at that point. For I
Okay.
think for me, like 3 years, 4 years, and for Kat, a couple more years than that, like 6 or 7. So you build to the point where you can have that workflow where you can have multiple series running at the same time, and multiple different kinds of projects, anthologies, short comics, web comics, long form comics, miniseries, blah blah blah, one shots. So I think that the skill set is, and it helps having two people to manage it,
Yeah.
is to keep yourself organized, but
Even
also
that sometimes doesn't feel like enough.
I know
We have to clone
that's been a big
ourselves.
conversation this month is two enough, but not trying to grow too quickly, like
Yeah.
do your one master project, get it right, build your audience, and then maybe like say, okay, I'm going to try to do two projects in 3 months, and if that's working out, then you can talk about doing your project a month, or two projects a month. But we it it's easy to look at someone and be like, oh, that's what they're doing, and then forget like, oh, this is actually the culmination of like several years of getting to the point where you can do this.
Yeah, knowing that you could do it right? Because like fulfillment is a whole nother job. Know that
Yeah.
you got that good, right? Can you do fulfillment? And for us to level up for fulfillment, it was hiring our loved ones to help us out. So we have
Yep.
like we have our family units helping us, and we're giving them some pocket change to do it. Because that's the only way we would be able to do it. If it was just the two of us, it would be impossible. We our last campaign, Little Mermaid, got 1,700 backers, and it was a safe for work and not safe for work covers. So I don't even know how
Yeah.
many books have been thrown out of this door, but we couldn't do that all by ourselves. So we
Right.
have his siblings, my parents help, his parents help, and then that's a way we were able to figure out, all right, how do you do fulfillment? And then, yeah, organization has been really big for us to just do our day to day, like the amount of meetings we have our morning meeting, then we're like, all right, let's get some work done. And now we've been doing even more meetings that are specific for things. Like it's like, all right, we got to write this. Let's write this. So I think it's just organization. And like Phil said, don't do it so quickly. You got to make sure like profits doing this, like make sure you have a stable platform, and then make sure you have the manpower you need and
Mhm.
the organization you need to do so.
Yeah, that's the challenge. I think fulfillment is a huge challenge. No matter if you do one a month or five a month or one every 6 months, it's whether it's 50 backers or like you said 1,700, which I can't imagine. That's pretty insane. Uh, but what are the things on that note? Like, what kind of keeps you guys motivated to is it just I want to tell these stories, and that's because I've talked to creators and they're like, oh well, this is going to be 14 issues and that's the end of the story that I'm going to tell. But is there more than just like trying to complete the story? Is it fan service in a way? You want to keep telling the stories because the fans keep reading it and they keep enjoying it, so you want to be there for them. Like what's the motivation there?
It's funny because I think we were just having a little conversation about this today, where I think it's knowing that you're living the dream, right? Like not
Mhm.
taking that for granted. Like this is our 9 to 5, is that we get to create
Mhm.
comic books. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So being appreciative that we get to do that, I think that motivates me for sure.
And I think I completely agree with that. We were just talking about that. I think making sure that you're excited about every project. I think that
Mhm.
when you're a 9 to 5 creative, and a 9 to 5 creative is really more like like a 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. creative most of the time. But when you're a full time creative, like it's easy to kind of get lost in the output and like stop feeling passionate about what you're doing, or have an issue where you're just kind of like, all right, this is just a point A to point B. And one thing we really try to hold ourselves accountable for is make sure we're excited about every issue. Um, Kat referenced before that we have this ever afterverse line, this like shared universe of like comics based on fairy tales, so like Snow White, Oz, Beauty
Yeah.
and the Beast, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, putting out as much of those as we do, we're in a constant state of writing them, and we always make sure we take a step back and say, are we still excited about this? If not, how do we make this
Okay.
issue more excited and exciting to us personally? And then by you know virtue of just the fact that we've have great fans who have similar interests to us, usually when we're excited about it, our fans are excited about it. So you know
And keep reinventing yourself too, all at the same time,
Yeah.
because we kept promoting the book of like Witches of Oz, like Glinda and the Wicked Witch get together. You like
Mhm.
Wicked, right? But like we don't do that every issue. The second issue we did an origin story for Glinda. It's like, didn't you ever want to know what happened to Glinda before the Wizard of Oz? And
Mhm.
then the third issue where we have them in Kansas. Like we want to be excited for every Kickstarter. We want to be excited for every issue, because if you're like issue 4, it's the same thing. Like, why would anyone be excited to pick that up? But if you're issue 4, here's a completely new story that you have a hook for. That's more exciting.
we have our Nightmare in Wonderland book where the first issue is it's like Sleeping Beauty meets Nightmare in Wonderland. The first issue is very much about like introducing the characters, getting them into Wonderland. The second issue is very like traditional Wonderland. You meet the Cheshire Cat, you go to the tea party. And the third issue, we're like, let's do something crazy and different. Like let's make the Queen of Hearts at like a pit boss in a casino and have them in like the Wonderland casino, and they have to win their way out of it. And it was so drastically different from the other issues, but like obviously
Mhm.
it's still the same characters, it's still the same theme. Like time was always such a big element of the series, and
Mhm.
casinos are a place to lose track of time. So you have the through line that makes sense, but also you're reinventing yourself, making it exciting. That was something I know like really motivated us, and we're like, oh yeah, like that was when I think we had naturally up to that point been like, how do we make each new issue continue to be exciting for us? I think that's the point where we were like, oh no, like this is the model. Look at every issue and be
Mhm.
like, what's the identity of this issue? What's the keyword? What's the thing that makes us
Mhm.
really exciting and makes us different? And then up to the because of that, I think we've not had really an issue writing any new issues of a series. I think we've always just been like, all right, let's find out what this anchor is and then let's build around it. And it's kept us motivated.
And that's what's interesting about working in a partnership, right? Because like I might be really excited for something and then Phil's like, "Oh, that's not something I'm really interested in." So how do you meet the middle ground? And honestly, the Nightmare Wonderland's a really good example because I'm not a big Wonderland fan. It's not usually my thing.
Hmm.
But then Phil asked the question like, "What would get you excited?" And then we did those things. And now I'm like,
Right.
"Wow, it's like it's so fun to write." Even though I wasn't as interested in Wonderland to be at first, then like, "Oh, it's cool." Then same thing, we're doing a woman's sports anthology. Phil is not a sports person, but he's like, "How do I find the joy and love for sports?" And now he's like, I've learned that I don't like stats, but I like the drama. I like the
Yeah.
characters. So it's like finding also the middle ground, which is really fun too. Which is honestly, I have more fun doing that. Like if I would just write everything I ever wanted, that's kind of boring. Like I liked also being like, oh, I didn't know I liked this thing until Phil introduced it to me, and that's been really fun too.
Yeah, getting excited about good storytelling, good characters is a challenge. But I think a lot of us indie creators, we almost are selfish. And I say this to fans when I meet them at shows. Like I am a selfish artist. I draw what I like to draw, the characters I like to draw. I draw how I like to draw, right? And you're not as challenged as much if you don't step outside of that comfort zone. And that's what I'm hearing is like, oh, we write about things that we maybe don't necessarily like, but we find a way to make it exciting. Therefore, it becomes more exciting and more kind of available for those that wouldn't necessarily think that they would like it. That's really interesting. Just to stay motivated to make sure that you're excited about what you're producing. And it kind of shows like as you launch all these Kickstarters and you're promoting stuff and you talk about it, there's passion, there's excitement there. And I think that gets the fans excited and want to support more books, right? They want to support more. Um, One thing that a lot of indie creators, this is one of those weird questions where some of us kind of struggle with it. Some of us don't even have to worry about it. But with you specifically, you have a lot of different characters and a lot of different titles. Do you feel that like maybe it's because you said it's taken some time to build up to this point of multiple Kickstarters a year with multiple IPs in a way, even though some are public domain, has multiple titles kind of hurt the growth potentially of other stories or other characters?
So we are very big marketers all at the same time. Like I think I have just the same amount of passion to write as I do to build a business.
Hmm.
So actually, it's only helped. And I'm going to pass the
Okay.
baton to Phil to talk about how marketing actually has helped
Yeah.
us to make a bigger audience.
Yeah, on the business side of things, it's a rising tide situation. When
Hmm.
you are putting out two, let's say, tangentially similar projects. So like we
Hmm.
have our Witches of Oz, like I referenced before. It's a mature queer romance, Glinda Wicked Witch. And then we also have Slice of Life, our webtoon, our original series about an anime character comes to life and falls in love with a cheerleader. Um, Intended for very different audiences. Slice of Life is very
Yeah.
like wholesome. It's about high school students, but and Witches of Oz is mature and
Hmm.
magical. But like they have the commonality. They're both queer stories. They're both sapphic stories, and we can't even say how many people said like, "Oh, I like Slice of Life, so I checked out Witches of Oz," or "I like Witches of
Okay.
Oz, so I checked out Slice of Life." So
Mm.
it's just when you build fans through one thing, you'll get people to check out your other thing, even if I'm not usually into mature books or I'm not usually into high school books. If they like something, they'll often go and see the work of other similar books. And then down the line, even further, you'll have a completely dissimilar book. You'll have our mystery slasher book, The Last Case of Devon and Taylor, that we see so many people saying like, oh, I've liked everything you put out, so I grabbed this, even though it's not something I would have looked at twice normally. It's
Mhm.
not usually the genre I go for. So on the marketing side, doing multiple different projects and having a passion for all of them and building an audience for them has only helped. On the creative side, I think it helps that Kat and I are so like OCD anal. Like we have like spreadsheets for every comic series, and we're pretty organized when it's time to write a series where we'll like go back to, let's say we're always writing the ever afterwards, like we said, so that's kind of always in our head. Those characters kind of always are living in
Mhm.
our universe, in our head. Same with Slice of Life and our other webtoon, Love at Second Bite. We're always writing them, so the characters never really leave us. But if we're sitting down to write Haunting or Like
Devin
Fall
and
Like Daughter
Taylor haunting, yeah.
or Devin and
Yeah.
Taylor, we'll go back and we'll be like, all right, let's make sure we reread everything we did before. Let's look at our spreadsheets
Mhm.
and look at like
Yeah.
our roadmap we built. Like, let's reacquaint ourselves with the series, the themes, the characters, the things that we've set out to do. Let's not be afraid to change things if our opinions have changed in the distance we have to the series. So, balancing a lot on the creative side means that sometimes you have to reacquaint yourself, but it's something we're always willing to do. And again, as we keep saying, the if you take one thing away from this, working as a duo has helped us in particular,
Yeah.
because usually one of us can keep it straight if the other person can't.
Yeah, we hold each other accountable, and going back to the marketing standpoint, like, w first of all, just to talk about how Lifeline Comics became Lifeline Comics, was that I'm bi, and I wanted to make a bisexual comic book because I just never saw that representation out there,
Yeah.
so I made
Yeah.
a bisexual comic anthology. That's how I got my name out there. And then at the same time, we were making Slice of Life, and By Visibility was much more successful than I thought it was gonna be. It was 1,300 backers at the time, and we launched Slice of Life at the same time, so it helped Slice of Life that we had By Visibility. Also, we actually I became friends with the head of one of the heads of Kickstarter at the comics at the time because like she was also bi. So I was just like, oh wow, like we
Yeah.
became friendly
Interesting.
because of that, and that's why I am as involved in Kickstarter as I am because that just so happened at
Right.
that point that we had that connection and she liked that project, and then I became part of the Kickstarter council because of it, because of that project. So everything's always a web. Like there's always a web of things that happen to kind of get you to where you are. And Slice of Life, and we talked about it, but that like helped us get somewhere else. And then combining audiences are really important because we had Witches of Oz and we had Terry Moore do a cover, and that to this day people are just like, I bought it originally for the Terry Moore cover, and then I really liked it and I bought all your other
Yeah.
stuff. Like we have multiple people saying that, and then we had Stefan Subject do the Beast of Snow issue one cover. A lot of people came for that. So like also just combining different audiences really help, like who you work with. That's why we do so many comic book anthologies. Like you just get a lot of different eyes in that way.
At the early stages, we said the first time Kat and I worked together, we did a crossover between our two books, Haunting and like Fall Like Daughter. And I remember we used to make like spreadsheets, and I would do like pivot tables and VLOOKUPs to be like, okay, how much do our audiences combine with each issue? Like how many overlapping backers did we have pre crossover? How many people came from each series on the crossover? And then the next issues after, how many people, like, how did our audience change? And at that early stage when we had much fewer campaigns and could pay more attention to that, I remember seeing drastic like increases. Just like all people really need, if they like what you're putting out, is a little nudge to check out another thing that you're putting out. So it's kind of been a cornerstone of our company, is just like, okay, you don't have to read everything, but if you like one thing, you're probably going to like everything else. And we'll do everything we can to nudge you towards it. I remember with By Visibility that Kat just mentioned, we put an art print in every package of Slice of Life of the cover, just so that people
Hmm.
would like see the characters and be like, oh, if I see this on Webtoon later, maybe I'll click on it because I saw it in my By Visibility package.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And you mentioned, Kat, a little bit about just you're passionate about a specific thing, and that resonated with, you know, people, right? And I think it doesn't matter necessarily the subject matter, but if you can find what resonates with your fan base, that also helps success, right? That allows people to say, "Oh, I also can relate to this," and so therefore you have that cross pollination where like you mentioned, I like this one book, but I'm going to go ahead and check out this other book. It may not be up my alley, but I like that because I like this other one book. So that's it's really interesting, just the dynamics of it and the business side. I think a lot of us indie creators, we kind of can get lost in the business side.
Yeah.
Spreadsheets is an important thing, and going through our backers and seeing who are the consistent backers, and what can we do to create value for them. And it seems that you definitely do that. We touched a little bit, or we've kind of been touching a little bit about this and promoting and marketing and all that. I see you a lot on social media, but is that really, if you could just touch base a little bit on, just being able to promote multiple Kickstarters at a time, and how does that look for both of you?
I always call it the Coca-Cola effect. Like from the beginning of our business, I came up with this theory of, and again, it's probably a real business theory in some sort of way, but it's my version of the business theory of the Coca-Cola effect. So when you go to, we live in New York. So when you go to Times Square and you see advertisement of Coca-Cola, is it right in that moment you're like, I really need that Coca-Cola, like I need it. But next time you need a soda, you're like, I heard really good things about Coca-Cola. You didn't hear any good things. You just saw it. You just saw that the advertisement. So, but I've heard good things about Coca-Cola, so I'm going to get Coca-Cola. So, like, that's what social media is. Do I believe every single time I post on Twitter that people are going to click on it. No, but exactly what you just said is like, I see you a lot on Twitter talking about these
Yeah.
things. So you're like, it's in your brain. Like, she knows a lot about Kickstarter. Luckily, I do know a lot about Kickstarter, but I'm also selling to your brain that I know a lot about Kickstarter because I'm always
Mhm.
talking about it. So it really is just like an advertisement tactic. But what actually has helped us, and I'm going to pass this to Phil, is our newsletter. And that's actually what gets people to
Mhm.
back our stuff. So you talk about the newsletter, Phil.
Yeah, I resisted having a newsletter for a long time. Cat really had to
Hmm,
like
interesting.
badger me. I resisted it because of the frequency. I didn't. I
It's
we
a lot
had
of
a direct.
work.
Mhm.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, and we'll touch on that. We had a direct line to our supporters through like our Kickstarters that you could always go back and update a previous Kickstarter. And I was like, why do we need this newsletter? And Kat was like, no, all the big people have newsletters. We have to put in the effort. You have to, you know, talk about what you're producing, but also talk about like what new things have you been watching, what cons have you been at,
Like,
what
who are
comics are you reading,
you?
who are
Yeah.
you? Like, the age we live in, a lot of the times to make it big, you kind of need to be a personality. You need like people need to
Yeah.
your fans need to be able to connect with you if they want to if you expect them to check out like 1,000 of your projects versus
Right.
like just checking out one thing that resonates with them. And it has been a massive change to our business. Our newsletter, we post every 2 weeks like a big newsletter post where we
Mhm.
like write up everything we've been working on. We talk about all the movies we've seen, the comics we've read, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a lot of
We'll
work,
do a
but
certain topic that is like,
yeah,
oh,
we'll
how
usually
to
anchor it
do
on a
better in your Comic Con or whatever.
Mhm.
Like,
exactly,
we'll do like a
Yeah.
how
topic
to
to interest
something.
people.
And so many people have come up to us and been like, "Oh no, I read your newsletter whenever it comes out." Like, I'd, like people go to our walk up to us at a convention and be like, "Oh, your movie review for so and so, you did so and so," or they'll know my fiance by name just because like I've mentioned him a few times in the newsletter. So it's been important for growing engagement and making
Mhm.
Lifeline Comics more of like a brand where it's like, oh no, that has the life that comes from Lifeline Comics. I
Mhm.
know them. I know the work they put out. I'm going to trust them. I'm going to try this new thing. Um, and then the other to the original question, the other point about running multiple campaigns. We don't expect every backer to back every campaign. Like that's
Yeah.
what it boils down to. We know eventually the goal is that people will cross pollinate and check out as many of our books as they can, but we always
And
know
we've seen
a
that
Witches
people
of
get
Oz.
books later. They'll be like,
Yeah,
oh, I missed Little Mermaid or whatever. I'll get it
Right.
later.
yeah. We always know like a Witches of Oz is going to get more backers and more dollars than a Haunting, but like
Mhm.
over time, Haunting gets plenty of dollars and plenty of backers and plenty of readers on its own. The goal is just to get people slowly, just to like the rising tide thing, just get people slowly to check out your other things and put out incentives where you can. Usually, if we're running two campaigns at the same time, we'll try to do like a crossover print. That's just like a freebie you get if you support both campaigns. It's relatively low cost. You have to just pay for the art and the printing of the print, and it
Right.
makes people feel special, and uh, it makes them feel like they have a reason to support both campaigns if they're on the fence about it. So
We have a
we try
loyalty
to,
program too. So if people back
Oh.
a lot of our campaigns, we'll give them a exclusive cover of a book at the end of the year. So, but I think the moral of the story is social media is a place for other people that don't know you, or maybe people that are kind of, kind of close to you or not, to be like, oh, they're continuing to do stuff. I always see that. Like, again, the Coca-Cola effect, but the newsletters for people to stay fans of you and to
Right.
keep wanting to care about you. So I don't know if I cut you off, Phil, if you had any more to say to that.
no, no, you covered it. We came up with that loyalty program idea at a casino, so it's
Nice.
Because we,
I mean,
when we want to treat ourselves, sometimes we'll be like, oh, let's go and like spend $200. Something we would spend on like a steak dinner and like go to the casino because something you'll notice is that they'll give you free hotel stays. We're like, we could literally get a free vacation if we do this, and they make you feel nice about it. So you're like,
Yeah.
wait, like, why don't we kind of do that and make people feel nice and kind of give tears? Because like, ultimately, we're not spending that much money. We're spending as much as what you would spend on a nice dinner. But you're like,
Yeah.
well, now I feel special because I'm going to this thing. And it's just like, we were like, that's a cool idea. And we were going to Vegas, I think, not for like we were going for a specific thing. I think we were going for a
Mhm.
conference or something. And we're like, so we had the casino thing because we went to the casino while we went to the conference. But then also we went on JetBlue and they had their loyalty programs. Like, you go
Oh,
on enough
yeah.
trips, you get a free thing. You're like, everyone has this. Like, people want to make you feel special as a business. And then if you
Mhm.
treat them right, you're like, I do feel special. So we did that loyalty program being like, oh, yeah, even if you spent like in our loyalty program, you could spend $1 on each campaign. It doesn't matter. It just shows that you keep supporting us. We want to treat you right. So
Right.
that's pretty much how we did it.
Yeah, I think everybody wants to feel special at one point, at
Exactly.
least. So let's get into the Kickstarters. I know you got a few, so we'll kind of run through them here. Well, not run, but I mean, we'll talk about them. But this is Holiday Bash. Let everyone know what this is.
So
So this, oh yeah, no, you go first, Phil.
sure. This was a very spur of the moment one for us. We came up with this one like 2 weeks ago, maybe, and we were just like, oh, like we should do something for like the holidays, and we were like, oh, do we
Mhm.
just put like a sale on our website? We were like, let's do something a little bigger than that. Let's like give people a chance to get gift wrapped comics. Get your comics like pre wrapped. You could send it to your recipient. And we'll put like a new cover for Slice of Life out. We'll put out like a new metal cover, which is the one you see in the thumbnail there.
So, and as
You
you
know,
see, very like no cost. Like it's a really relatively cheap
Yeah.
yeah,
campaign because we just made a new cover and we're just printing these metal covers and we bought the
yeah,
wrapping paper. But it was
Right.
just a
and
way to promote our old books to people.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like every once in a while we try to put out these like exclusive variant covers for like a particular event or a particular like time of year just to give
Mhm.
people like an exclusive they can buy that's relatively like low cost, low effort on our end, but just keeps people excited. And it's something we didn't even do a pre-launch page for. We just kind of dropped it and we're just like, all right, every dollar we get for this is a dollar we didn't otherwise have. It's a chance for our fans to get their loved ones into comic books and into
Right.
our comic
Right.
books in particular. So we're very happy with it. It crushed its very small funding goal in the first day, and we
Hmm.
I've already justified the cost of the campaign, of the metal covers, the wrapping paper,
Mm.
all of that. So this was just like a cool last minute idea where we were just like, let's try something a little different, and then our
Yeah,
whole
like try
library
to
Yeah.
is
find a new market, you know? It's just like it was because again, Christmas is such a big consumer month. So it's just like, how do
Hmm.
you do that as a Kickstarter? How do you do that as a comic creator? Because it is hard. Like I sometimes feel like the outside looking in when it comes to like Black Friday or whatever, like these other businesses. So I'm like, well, how do we utilize that? And we're gonna do something on
Right.
the website too. We're gonna do pretty much the same thing, except but some people don't want to back a Kickstarter. They don't believe it's gonna come in time. That was another thing. We're like, no, it's gonna come in time for December. That's why we're doing it. We're really working hard to do it. We had to time everything very correctly and take pictures of when I went to the post office, like what date do you need to to get this
Yeah.
to the post office to make sure it's happening. But we're gonna do the same thing for the website just in case people don't like. Not everyone likes backing Kickstarters, so we'll promote that to our webtoon audience and stuff like that. So we're
Hmm.
just doing like a big Christmas push, pretty much, or
Yeah.
holiday push, we'll say.
And they can they pick the book that they want, or is it kind of
Mhm.
more? Yeah. Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
That's
every one
awesome.
of our books is listed as a tier. You can also get mystery boxes. So,
Yeah.
the new item, quote unquote, is that metal cover. That's the project thumbnail. And then all
Hmm.
the other tiers are like, if you want to get this book, if you want to get this book. And then everything's also as an add on. So you can really
Hmm.
customize it however you need. We also have our pins here.
Nice. Those are cute. Doing a Kickstarter, like just having all the add-ons and all the reward tiers. I mean, I think a lot of people don't realize how much work goes into it. It's having all the images the right size, and it's got to look good. You don't want to like half-ass something on Kickstarter. You really need like presentation to be, top mind. So yeah, these are great.
Uh, it's a lot of work for sure. And yeah, the enamel pins to go on that. That was a business we did not know we were gonna have. Like neither me
Yeah.
or Phil really wear enamel pins, but we sold an enamel pin on like one of our campaigns and it did
High
pretty well.
visibility.
By
Yeah.
visibility. It started there, and we, like, just had them at a Comic-Con just because, like, "Oh, we had them on the Kickstarter, I guess we'll do it at Comic-Con," and it sold really, really well. And, most of our events, the enamel pins sell, like, because people really like enamel pins. We're like, "Oh, it's a whole 'nother business we did not know we'd ever get into," but
People would
it
say
kinda
like,
fell in
"Why
our
do you
lap.
only have my pins? Can you like get the other like flag
Yeah.
identities?" And then it was like, "Oh, can you
Hmm.
get pins from your other books?" And it was just like, "Oh, I like witches. Can you just have a pin with a witch hat?" And it's just like, all right,
Yeah. No, that would
it's
be
To
not
my
that
make
wife
the
for
fun.
sure.
and to make context too, like we've had our Etsy store open for maybe like a year and a half, maybe 2 years,
Yeah.
and we've sold 1,500 sales of, and they're all just pins. It's like we
Yeah.
found this, and we probably get out like 20 packages of Etsy packages every few days that are, and we're not
Wow.
promoting them. It's just on Etsy. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just like
that's
it's a
crazy.
whole nother business.
Yeah,
It's
and
something we
mystery
just
boxes. Yeah, people love mystery boxes. So,
Those are pretty good sales at cons too, and they're very good sales
Honestly,
online. Like they're ways to get people into other comics. So we'll give like obviously like a few of the comics that are based on the box, but then we'll throw in like a dancer or a haunting, and then people are like, wait,
Hmm.
I never would have bought this, but this is really cool, and it's a good
Yeah,
way to like promote your other books.
yeah. No, this looks great. That's a really cool idea, and I think sometimes as creators we just kind of stay in our bubble. I know I do. A lot of the people I talk to, we are introverts by nature, so we just like, oh, we're
Yeah.
working on this next book, and we want to get this done, and we're trying to get it done and put out a good product. And it seems like both of you, and just in general, the company really is staying creative and doing creative things outside the box potentially, you know what I mean, like doing things that keep people engaged, keep people coming back, cross promoting type of stuff. So that's kind of a very word to the wise, like this is a way to do it. You like you have found that way to be successful that way.
Yeah, innovation's just really important to us. So like we
Hmm.
always want to like if I'm an outside looking in person, like how would I get excited? And that's what we're trying to do
Hmm.
is like how do you keep people excited? And it's funny because like yeah, me and Phil like because his fiance Julius is like the most extroverted person you'll ever meet in your life. He actually likes talking to people, and me and Phil are like we love like staying home and just like chilling.
Yeah.
And I always say we're both like we're introverts are really good at pretending to be extroverts.
Yes,
So and
agreed.
again, I have like YouTube channel and like I do a lot of panels and Phil does a lot of panels and he has to be present
Hmm.
a lot. And but yeah, we're just like really good at pretending. So if you ever think that we actually are like, oh man, I love talking to 100 people, like that's not our pride and joy, but I'm glad that people think
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, they're very similar. I get passionate and I get excited about talking about what I'm creating, talking with other creators because obviously, like, there is that creativity, kind of the creative juices flow, and then you just start being passionate. You start getting excited about talking about fun stuff. I love comics. I love the medium, and I just enjoy the physical floppies, or trades, whatever
Mhm.
people like to read. But I like being able to physically read books versus more digital. I've read some digital books, and that's fine. That's kind of webtoons is definitely a very popular thing. My niece reads webtoons all the time, but it's like I'm more of a physical kind of media person. So, this is something that's definitely going to be out before the holidays. They can back it now. You have another one, and we're going to dive into, which is, The Witches of Oz, which seems to be the more, I would say, bigger one, kind of not safe for work, more mature type of stuff. But yeah, walk us through this one.
Yeah, this is the Ever Afterverse. These are ones that, these are our bigger projects, our big projects, and it is because obviously, like, sexiness does sell, but also it is utilizing your public domains in a way that feel unique. Because like, there's so many not safe for work books out there that
Yeah.
they have like 20 backers. Like, you just have to be able to sell to an audience and also be
Hmm.
like, hey, this is has story. We always relate it to like Game of Thrones. It's not just a book that and again nothing there's some great books out there that is just a
Yeah.
kinky book and they do so well, but also that's because specifically they are a kinky book and they are selling on that and that's the
Hmm.
niche. Like, find your niche. If you're doing, that's the best answer. Like, find your niche. Like, sex does sell, but it doesn't only sell. You have to
Yeah.
be like, what am I doing different about this? And that's
Yeah.
what we tried with the Ever Afterverse, and it has succeeded. And again, our niche is queer storytelling. Like, there's not as much as you think that is out there, so we love telling queer stories. Again, it's not the only stories we tell, but it's something we're passionate about, and the Ever Afterverse is one of those things. And uh, Phil, in particular, has a very big fandom for Wizard of Oz. So
I do, yeah. We the Ever Afterverse, these mature fairy tale books started with The Beast in Snow, which is our vampire Snow White Werewolf Belle book, and that one like blew up, like over 2,000 backers, like
eighty
Yeah.
best
thousand
seller,
dollars.
Yeah. Crazy.
$80,000, best campaign we'd ever had by far at the time, and
Hmm.
still to this
Now we've
day
done it a
rivaling.
few times, which is cool though.
Yeah, but after that, we were like, okay, like this is definitely working. Like we should do more of this. And we came up with Nightmare in Wonderland. After that, we were like, oh yeah, like what's another like crossover you could do? It's Sleeping Beauty,
Hmm.
Alice in Wonderland. And then after that, this was like a year before the Wicked movie first came out. As Kat said, I growing up huge Oz fan. I love The Wizard of
Yeah.
Oz. It was one of my favorite movies.
But
I
we
love the
also were
Wicked.
in a marketing standpoint too. We're like, what are things that people really want? We couldn't
Mhm.
get our mind, like, it was months we couldn't get our mind around what's the third book we go on, and then we were like, this is the third book.
Yeah, no, it at the time we were trying to come up with what would our third book be. I remember one day, like Witches of Oz, like this book kind of
Hmm.
like hit me. I was like, oh no, like I love Wizard of Oz. I love Wicked, the Broadway play, which I'd seen in middle school and seen like several times since then. It's a it's a pair of characters who people really want to be together, and there are public domain versions of them. There is Glinda and the Wicked Witch, who
Hmm.
are public domain. That's what Wicked uses to make their uh their stories, the public domain
Right.
versions of the characters. So, I mentioned it to Kat and she was like, yeah, that might be it. And then Kat, once you start thinking about it, especially now with like Wicked movies having come out, but once you start thinking about it, you see just how much like Oz is in the culture and like
Right.
referenced in everything, and like, is in every store you go into in some
Go to a
capacity.
Dave and Buster's,
Yeah.
Yeah, like
It's
how
crazy.
the language is in like what we say, how it'll be like follow the Elbrick Road,
This
man
is
behind the
before
curtain,
the
like just
movie
like
came out.
Right.
yeah, like just colloquialisms that are just so baked into us. And then like, Kat would be on Instagram and she'd see like, a queer couple dressed as Glinda and Elphaba. And it's just like, okay, no, this is the next book to do. Like once it like dawned
Yeah.
on us, it was very obvious. And, we very much wanted to put our own spin on it. We wanted to, kind of do a sequel story to The Wizard of Oz, and like, do a story that focuses on who are these two witches individually, and like how do they make each other better, how do they change each other for the better, quote unquote,
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
our version of the story, while also living in the same world as our other books. So, it's a story we both feel very strongly about. It's something based on something that we, and I in particular, like really really love, being Wizard of Oz and Wicked, but it's also very much something like our own, and then also very like market friendly, because it is a sexy book. It is a
Hmm.
queer sexy book. So a lot of cylinders firing on that one.
And again, we timed it correctly too, because the first one, I don't when the first one was before Wicked. I don't, because I know the
Yeah.
second one was for the first
We did
movie
the
we timed
first
it at.
issue, I want to say like March of 2020.
The trailer might have
For,
dropped. I don't remember.
say again?
The trailer might have dropped, because I remember like people were thinking
Yeah.
about Wicked when the first one came out, but
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
more it
we
was
did,
more the Terry Moore cover sold that first issue.
they had
Obviously,
started to do
everything sold it, but
pre-promotion for the
yeah,
movie. I think they dropped like,
the
logo, like
poster.
a teaser trailer, poster, and then
Mm,
we fulfilled that whole campaign, and then we did the second issue when the first Wicked movie came out. Um, and then this
that was a
third
good
issue,
idea.
it was a good idea. And then this third issue, we made sure we held until Wicked for Good came out,
Oh,
because
nice. Okay.
we wanted to capture that synergy. Like, again,
Yeah.
this isn't based on Wicked. It is our own interpretation, but obviously, like, you see a blonde pink witch and a green woman together. You're like, oh, I'm thinking of Wicked. Like, let me
Yeah.
see like an alternate version where they're a couple.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
pacing for this mid campaign's been great because of it, because everyone's searching Wicked. So it's like, oh, this is cool, another story.
yeah, it's very visual, like, just the 2 characters from Wicked and Wizard of Oz, like, that's one film that is just really carried over for decades and decades of just, things that people recognize, things that we say, and just I mean, I grew up watching it too, so, I mean, I I'm a fan of it. I'm not a super fan of Wizard of Oz. I think I have more, like, kind of a respect for what the film is and what it did,
Mm.
because I'm kind of like a film nerd. I like film a lot, but yeah, it's a really fun story, and I love the story of it. And I think that's you can cross pollinate with what's going on in pop culture, film, entertainment, and if you can tell a fun story that kind of is different, like you said, creative and different off what's kind of popular, then that really does it can help, right?
It
As it did with this.
And it was funny because, when we were doing Witches of Oz, we were both like, we rewatched Wizard of Oz, and I remember Phil, and I don't remember what exactly you're like, "This is what," maybe it was the music. I think you were like, besides, the Over the Rainbow, 'cause I was like, "No, I think everyone, like, connects that." You're like, "All the music is what people remember about Wizard
Mhm,
of Oz."
mhm.
And I was coming from like, "Oh, no," I was just, like, kinda thinking about film history, and I was like, what I think about Wizard of Oz, and this is crazy, is like the conspiracy theory of the Munchkin in the background. Like that's the first thing I think of. Is like that is not the first thing I think of. I'm like, I don't know why. Like obviously I think about Over the Rainbow and everything, but I remember we were both like in such different headspaces. But that's what's cool about Wizard of Oz. Is like it either you're like really into the story like Phil, or for me, I was really interested in like what it meant for Hollywood and like
Right.
what the context was for that. So I think everyone has a different connection to the movie.
Yeah, and for me, it was syncing up Dark Side of the Moon with The Lion Roar and listening to the album while watching the movie. So, we all you're right, we all have different, ways we connect to that
Things
film.
to remember. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, this looks like a very pretty large campaign. There's a lot going on with it. Let's get back to the top here. Let's see here, all the variant covers. Um, let's because you mentioned the Terry Moore cover. Oh, this is
So
issue
that's
3.
for the
Sorry, that was
first
for issue
issue,
1.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I mean, no, the artwork is fantastic. It really is. It's a really cool take on something classic, and I think that's probably one of the things that resonates. I mean, I would say for me, it would resonate with me a new take on something that's classic, right? A unique, creative take. And with so many things being done today, how do we, as creatives, stay creative, but also how do we create something new and fresh that maybe is familiar? And I think that's a challenge for all of us. But yeah, this is another fantastic looking book. So if you like Wizard of Oz or, witches in general, I mean, I know that seems to be a resurgence of that genre of things as well. Like you said, and you're right, sex does sell, but it's also intentional. And even for books I write, like I try to stay away from certain things unless relevant to that story, relevant to that character. I don't typically just throw things in because it's popular or because like that's what is a talking point, hot button today. But it seems that you do the same thing. Like these stories are intentional. They've resonated with the audience, but there's intention behind them. There's passion behind them. You know,
for sure.
yeah. And then the last one here we have that's going on is I'm gonna butcher that Malik of the Damned. Is that right?
You got it, Malik the
Okay.
Damned.
Yeah.
This is actually really interesting because we did not write it. So this year we've kind of started publishing some other people because
hmm
we have the means to do so. And again, goes back to cross promotion. You get other people's audiences, it's just going to help you out too. And we had, a couple of people behind the scenes have interest. So this is David Boer, who worked on books that I love. Like I love Specs from Boom. It was just one of my favorite books, and it was very queer, and it was just really a great book. And I really like the book Rain. He co-wrote with Joe Hill, so I already knew David, and we knew of each other, and our mutual friend was working with David and said, "Oh, David has a pitch on something like he's been trying to pass around." You're like, "Let's look at it," and it just was a perfect fit for Lifeline. And we have another book coming out in January that's written by someone else, and this is like the start of. I won't say it's the start of something new. It's not going to be very constant. Like we're not going to publish more other creators than us, but it helps fill out our line and also tell others. Give our means to help other people tell stories. So that's what Malik, the reason why we did it. But what is the book about? So
Yeah, Malik the Damned is about the son of Satan who was cast out of hell for being gay. Satan doesn't mind, any sort of depravity, but being gay is where he drew the line for some reason.
Well, that's
And
interesting.
and then
Of all the things.
of all the things, exactly. And Malik is now kind of like a supernatural investigator who is cast out of hell and joined by some other hell spawn who got cast out on their own or cast out alongside him and is, in this opening issue, this opening arc is investigating a murder in the South at the hands of a priest who seems like he might have been demonically possessed. So, it's very like Constantine meets Hellboy is the way that David pitched it to us when we first talked to him, and I think it's on the Kickstarter page too. It's very like a
Mhm.
fuzzy way to describe it, and he
hmm
always says that you know uh, it's a love letter to people who are cast out of their homes
hmm
for being gay or being otherwise queer or different in some way, and about Malik, kind of adjusting to that and also like building his life outside of that. So, it's a story
And
that
building his found family, I would say,
Mhm.
like kooky characters that become your found family.
Exactly. And it's a story that resonates with us personally. It's a story that fits the Lifeline brand very well.
hmm hmm
So, it's a very easy get for us, very easy pickup for us. And
But also story wouldn't be able to tell. I think that we're both not we both don't lean into this genre as much, and then
Okay.
also I don't know if we would have tackled these specific themes. So
Yeah.
it's cool to also get stories that resonate with you, but also I don't know we could have personally written,
hmm
which is cool.
Yeah, I think I don't say we'd never write like a heaven hell sort of
Right.
story, but it's not something on our radar right now. And if we did,
Mm,
it wouldn't look like this. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, this imprint is called Deathline, where we're publishing darker stories from like other creators.
Hmm. Hmm.
Our next Deathline title in January is a vampire story that you know we've written vampire stories before, but it's very different from the other ones we've written. So like it kind of like is the perfect ground of covering a topic we've tackled before, but in a different way. So it's cool to approach Deathline in that way, and give other creators the opportunity to put out their work through our platform that maybe they haven't been able to land in another place, and then also you know get to put out stories that Kat and I don't have plans to tell, and in the
Yeah.
near or distant future.
Yeah, this one actually is pretty interesting because no, I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to being queer, gay, bi, something like that. I think that community, like you said, there's not a lot of books out there for it, and I think there's absolutely a need for it and a market for it, like good storytelling. And for this one, it's kind of interesting because you're also able to resonate with those people that feel like they were cast out, for whatever reason. So you're
mm,
touching on something, and I think we talked a little bit about it, just writing characters that resonate with people. And how do we do that? How do we, I write more superhero, darker themed things, and yeah, they're superheroes. How do people relate to Superman? Well, he's an alien from another planet, but they made Superman a relatable character because he had like real life struggles. But what you're doing, you're tapping into something that is a need in a community that is needed, right? So I think that's just really important to tell these stories. So this one's pretty interesting, actually. I mean, not to say that the other ones are not, but this one is just has that like kind of interesting cross being casted out, but also because he was gay, and you're like, wait a minute,
yeah.
how does that work?
And again, that's why we love this Deathline um thing, because the big imprint is because yeah, we're telling stories that we wouldn't normally tell and could
Hmm.
resonate
Hmm.
to somebody else. So yeah, it's cool. And again,
Yeah,
it's a
Yeah,
different voice.
yeah,
yeah,
and put a different spin on. We've told plenty of queer stories. We'll continue to tell queer stories
yeah,
because we're queer and we love queer stories. But like,
yeah.
it's just a testament. We looked at 3 campaigns that are full of queer stories today, and they all look very different. They're all touching on a different
Mm,
element of
Hmm.
queerness, but also just like humanity and relationships in general, romantic
Yeah,
friendship, family, etc. So, you know, at the we said before, our Cat's and my friendship, the foundation of it was that we both just loved Cordelia Chase from Buffy. We
yeah.
love like this supporting character. We love character, and that's the first thing we look at whenever we approach storytelling, whether it's writing our own story or procuring something that we can publish through Deathline. Like we just want great characters who resonate and tell a very human story.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a need for it. I think it's important. That's just there's a market there. It's not just the market, but there's a need. There's a genuine need to tell these kind of stories. It's just there's just not enough, in my opinion, to be honest. Like I love reading a good story. I don't care about like a lot of the social or political things that go on. I just want a good story. And I
Mhm.
think you tell good stories, and that's what matters. And I think that's really what resonates with fans is like, oh, I can relate to this, but it's also a really good story, and that's what's important. Both ends is what's important, I should say. But yeah, really, really great campaigns. And like you mentioned, you're going to have one launching in more in December. I mean, every single month you're doing another
It
story,
is.
continuing the stories that we've kind of touched on, but also new ones and different ones. And even in 2026, it doesn't seem like you're going to be slowing down at any time soon.
No, we have I think our calendar planned out until next fall. So
Okay.
we have everything planned out until then. Obviously there's more stories after that, but those are like literally concrete dates on the calendar of like these are all
Yeah.
the stories we're launching from fall. And we got some cool stuff coming up. We're really excited about like continuing stories, but then also new stuff. Maybe
Mhm.
we've already talked about it before, but we're doing a crossover with all those Ever Afterwards titles. So that's gonna be huge. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and then I mean all the books are available on your website as well.
Yep, lifelinecomics.com. Go check out all our books over there. And then if you cannot wait for the website, you should go check out our Kickstarters because those are the people that get priority. It's kind of like pre-ordering a book, and then
Yeah.
but if you don't love Kickstarter, if you're just like I don't, I don't usually I like PayPal, then go go check out our website.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. And I think that's kind of the nice thing. I know Kickstarter and social media sometimes can get a lot of hate, but I like the Kickstarter because it is like a preview. Like you're getting priority. You're getting this book before the general public really has availability for it. So,
And
you
And
know,
usually
we
the
that's
give you
nice.
extras. Yeah, go on, Phil. You're gonna say the same
Yeah.
same
exact thing.
exact thing.
Yeah.
You get those stretch goals. Like very often, will unlock like free prints or stickers or
Yeah.
pins or what
Signatures.
have you.
Yeah.
Trading cards. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
you'll get signed books usually through Kickstarter for all of our campaigns. You'll get signed books
Mhm.
when you support the Kickstarters. So it's you're helping make it get made. So you got to get some bonus stuff in particular.
Yeah,
And
and I think that's what a lot of fans like, and I think that's why your campaigns also are so big or so successful is because you create that value for fans. It's not just here's a book and go read it. It's here's all these extras, right? And I enjoy that. Sometimes it's a lot when there's a lot of extra
Right.
stretch goals. You're like, what am I going to do with all this? But it's nice that like again, you feel special. As backing Kickstarters, you have that priority as a fan. So I will say it's been great kind of learning your story, talking and getting to know you a little bit better. You can find Phil. I don't know if we're friends on social, but if you're on social, feel free. I see Kat all the time, but
You're gonna
I'll
be seeing
at
Phil
Phil
soon
Falco
now.
right.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm at Phil Falco Writes on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, etc. And then
yeah.
I'll fix us not being friends on Facebook, where I'm
Oh,
just Phil.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's just it's really fun to talk to other creative people, to hear their stories, to share in their success in a way just by having this podcast and kind of promoting everybody. It's one big community. When one person succeeds, I think, like you said, rising tides, like it helps other creatives, it helps cross pollinate other stories and more visibility. We can always use more eyes on what we're doing so that maybe we all can live the dream one day.
I
Yeah.
I would love that. I really do. I want to see even more
Mhm.
people making comics for a living because that's I would love to see that. And it's always like what we do in our newsletters too is try to give advice and stuff. That's something that we really feel passionate about. Trying to
I always
have
try to shout
tides
out what
rise.
other people are putting
Mm.
out too.
Yeah, and that's important. So I really appreciate you jumping on this podcast with me and telling your story. And we'll wrap it up here. And I will see you on the next podcast.